Breaking news here right now on a day where President-elect Trump has dropped his Attorney General nominee, Matt Gaetz, who formerly publicly withdrew today. And now, moments ago here, we just got President-elect Trump announcing a new selection for Attorney General, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. She was a lawyer who has worked alongside Donald Trump's impeachment defense lawyers at the first impeachment. So she played that role for then President Trump. In a new post that we got here, 6:28 p.m. Eastern from Donald Trump's Truth Social, he says he is announcing former Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi, as our, quote, next Attorney General of the United States. And he cites her work as a prosecutor for nearly, quote, 20 years. A contrast, of course, to Matt Gaetz's inexperience. And he says she was, quote, very tough on violent criminals and made the streets safe for Florida families. He goes on, and this is notable given the controversies. Donald Trump, in this statement, says, quote, the partisan DOJ has been weaponized against me, not anymore. Pam will refocus the DOJ to its intended purpose. We are following this breaking story. It came just moments ago here as we were covering the other DOJ news with Donald Trump's other first pick for AG, dropping out, Matt Gaetz. And we're joined by Juanita Tolliver, who is covering that story with us. Welcome back. This is that kind of breaking news night. Your thoughts on the fast naming of a replacement?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind, Ari, is loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. It's my understanding that Pam Bondi has been right there, yes, Kendrick, right there with Trump on his super PAC for the 2024 election. She helped participate in his legal contestation of the 2020 election and vote counting in that election, as well as apparently engaging in some of his previous cases down in Florida. And so I feel like she is someone who Donald Trump fully expects to be able to pick up the phone and call and do his bidding. Remember, this is a behavior and approach that Trump attempted with William Barr, but apparently Barr had a threshold that prompted him to stop doing Trump's bidding around his push around 2020 election and overturning the efforts to overturn the election. But Pam Bondi seems to be someone that he's plucked from Florida. We know he is a Florida man, but he's plucked because he's familiar with her and fully expects her to go from his super PAC now into the DOJ to do his bidding, which we know includes cleaning house over at DOJ for anyone who's been critical of him.
Stay with me, Juanita. I want to bring back Jason Johnson. You may remember him from such news events as covering the DOJ 10 minutes ago. Welcome back, Jason.
Thanks, Ari.
It's a big news night. I'm going to let you get in here, but I'll tell viewers, because I always try to keep it as real and frank as possible. This is how this works. We did book these two guests for a different Attorney General nominee story, but I don't think either of you knew that this was breaking. The timestamp on Donald Trump's statement tonight, 6:28 p.m. Eastern, naming Pam Bondi. I want to add a couple more details on that because it's a breaking story, and then Jason bring you in here. There is a distinction that everyone should understand about this Attorney General nominee versus Matt Gaetz. Many people, experts, nonpartisan officials, as well as Republicans, noted that Gaetz had essentially no experience as a prosecutor or in the kind of legal managerial work that anyone would do at any leadership level at DOJ, let alone the top post of Attorney General of the United States. The contrast to Ms. Bondi is she does have that kind of experience, much more traditional in what you would see in a top DOJ post, because she was the top law enforcement official in the state of Florida, and she has over 15 years experience in that role and other roles as a prosecutor. If you remember Kamala Harris running for president and talking about being a prosecutor at the state level, this is that kind of job. And so in that experience, it is much more of a traditional role, something that the Senate Judiciary Committee and others who vet these kind of nominees would see as a positive, as experience. The flip side, which our guest Juanita just mentioned, is unlike traditional attorneys general, this is an individual who's very tied politically to Donald Trump, the loyalty that he has talked about. And while there is nothing disqualifying about working on an impeachment defense, it positions her not as someone who is a nonpartisan state-level prosecutor ready to rise up to the DOJ, but someone who's already been in those really searing partisan battles over Donald Trump's conduct in history. And you want generally an attorney general who is not overly tied to past partisan positions, even when they intersect, for example, with politics and law in Washington. So that's one update I wanted to give and bring you back in, Jason. I say that with all accuracy and fairness. On paper, her state-level experience is much closer to what presidents in both parties have sought at the DOJ. That's a huge difference with Matt Gaetz. The political part, though, is different. Right. And then what I bring to you is, and Juanita mentioned it, you have that political history, and you have a proposed number two, a deputy attorney general who recently handled Donald Trump's criminal defense. So if this were the team, and they have to go through vetting and confirmation, but if this were the team, this would be two of the most politically defensive lawyers of the personal capacity of an incoming president we've ever seen running DOJ at the same time.
All right, I completely agree. And quite frankly, my thought is that after Gates dropped out, it would be essentially somebody from Trump's legal team. It would be like a Jay Sekulow or somebody like that. I assume that's where he would get these people from. Unlike William Barr, even going back to when we were all kids and like Janet Reno, right? Occasionally attorney generals try to behave like they are not the personal lawyer of the president of the United States. That is completely out the window. Pam Bondi is exactly what I was saying in the last segment that we should all fear because she's competent. We may not agree with her ideologically, but she actually knows how to do this job. So if anyone on the Democratic side or anyone who cared about liberty or justice was thinking, well, maybe Matt Gaetz will screw this up and that'll give us some time. No, Pam Bondi knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing about immigration. Remember, Florida is one of those states that's been very aggressive about migrants and deportation and moving people to different states and everything else like that. Florida has enacted all sorts of rules and laws to curtail students and what they can do on campuses and finding legal justifications for manipulating education money. She is a dangerous and effective pick, and that's frankly worse than what we would have got with Matt Gaetz, even with the deplorable moral background that he has.
Yeah, and I want to discuss that with a little more depth with both of you, including her record on civil rights, LGBTQ rights, and other issues that are front and center at the DOJ, and which we know were also big campaign issues this cycle. So I'm going to ask both of you to hang with me. I've been very clear with viewers. This is breaking news. Our guests are going to stay. But I'm going to go one-on-one and check in with someone who's been following all of the transition news very closely. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard live from Mar-a-Lago. I got a couple of questions for you, Vaughn, but first I'll let you report out what you're hearing and what you think is important on what has been a very active day of transition changes.
Right, Ari. If I could just kind of give you a sense of how this is going here at this point, because of Donald Trump's lack of telegraphing on so many of these picks and making them like the Matt Gaetz pick on the fly on his airplane as he was coming back here to Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach with Matt Gaetz announcing his pick, surprising and turning the heads of everybody. I was with a fellow reporter just about a block from where I'm standing now, and that reporter says, Pam Bondi, he picked Pam Bondi, and my reaction was, for what? And I don't say that out of a disrespect to Pam Bondi, the longtime attorney general from Florida here, but because Pam Bondi's name was not in the mix here, at least publicly, of all of the litany of names that we were talking about to fill this capacity. She's somebody that, as far as my understanding of her history, does not have experience in the Department of Justice, yet she served here. She defended Donald Trump during his impeachment proceedings. She has been a frequent presence over the last 5 years on cable TV, particularly Fox and other right-wing outlets, defending Donald Trump from during the course of his indictment to the two different impeachment proceedings he went through. So clearly, I think in Pam Bondi, I think there's a lot of questions that she'll undoubtedly face during the confirmation proceedings. But Ari, as you guys were just talking about, I think that there's also the question of especially to what extent will Pam Bondi's loyalty extend to her going and seeking out political investigations into his perceived enemies, and will she be able to withstand throughout the course of his administration to any pressures or desires that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, wants her to execute on in the position as the country's top prosecutor.
Yeah, and let's dig into what you're reporting and what's striking here, because I don't mean to sound quaint or old-fashioned, but in Donald Trump's first term and most incoming presidencies, even, shall we say, disruptive, untraditional ones, there's a fair amount of vetting and thought that goes into selections. It is possible that the lack of vetting of several of these candidates is going to complicate the process, which, if you're a Donald Trump fan, that's a negative, because you'd like to see qualified people come in to competently carry out the agenda. We're reporting on the problems that ended Gaetz's nomination today. Pete Hegseth has had some problems that were apparently surprises to the Trump team. And so what you're telling us right now tonight is that this came fast enough that it doesn't sound like, to your, at least what you understand, that there was a sufficient or extensive debate, discussion, and vetting process. I mean, you just had a candidate go lose partly over vetting.
Right. And as far as we're aware, those memorandums of understanding with the GSA have still not been signed by this Trump transition team, meaning that they have not agreed to go through FBI background checks or security clearances for any of these cabinet picks or nominees. There is no federal funding that is going to this transition because it will require them to sign financial disclosures about private money that they are getting and potential conflicts of interest. So really, Mar-a-Lago is sort of operating on its own island, if you will, in very literal and metaphorical ways here. I think that this is, for this operation, it's not just Pete Hegseth, it's not just Matt Gaetz, right, over sexual misconduct and sexual assault allegations, but you just take Linda McMahon. Her husband, Vince McMahon, in WWE are under Department of Justice investigation as we speak for allegedly knowing about sex trafficking by a WWE employee. And there's questions over the extent to which Pam Bondi, in this capacity, how she would use the DOJ. There's, I think, a series of questions about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well, who has a deep, difficult history. I think that we as reporters have tried to make our way through, but a lot of questions still outstanding. So I think, Ari, this has been a very accelerated week of announcements compared to 8 years ago, when he steadily, over the course of weeks, or even compared to the Biden administration, over the course of 2 months, rolled out his picks. So I think that this, if you will, this will allow for public scrutiny for the next 2 months because of his accelerated pace of doing this. But through at least the more formal, typical channels of the federal government and the investigative bodies, which have usually helped these transitions, I think it may take more of a public or journalistic look at these individuals to determine the extent to which these confirmation proceedings will be fruitful for them or not.